If you love to travel, you are going to need a travel agent. And if you want the best travel agent, you are going to need Boullies Travel. Boullies Travel can help you with any kind of holiday wherever you want to go in the world, taking care of every last detail. From package holidays through to fully customized itineraries where you are completely in control of where you go and what you do. And the best part, there are no charges whatsoever. Rated excellent on Trustpilot. Start your next adventure right now by going to bouliestravel.com. Hello and welcome to episode 4 in our Japan series of the Jason Boull Travel podcast. And I'm back here again with Charlie Orr, the absolute mind of everything to do with Japan. There's nothing this guy doesn't know, and I just can't wait, honest. And I just can't wait to be able to deep dive a bit more. And today, as I said, we are looking at experiences. And it's quite difficult because Charlie likes to talk about all these things in one big picture. So we keep on crossing over back and forth because it's so exciting, really, when you kind of get involved into all the different details of it. So we're going to try and stay focused on experiences today.
Absolutely.
We have other things to come up afterwards. But yeah, we may have touched on some things before, but today we're going to have a nice big deep dive into these experiences. And there's some things that I really can't wait to ask you and kind of deep dive into as well. And a really, really interesting topic. So I can't wait to get on it. So firstly, Japan is often described as a place of contrast and ancient traditions, kind of alongside cutting-edge modern life. How do these kind of contrasts come through in the experiences that travellers are going to have?
I mean, this is such a good question to start on because Japan is, I'd say, a country of many different characters and things to experience as well when you travel over there. So kind of seeing what is kind of out and about in some of the larger cities compared to the more cultural cities as well, and kind of getting into the countryside and the smaller villages and towns, you'll just notice different characters and different ways of, kind of interacting with things and that history and that sort of combined things. So actually doing experiences that kind of cross those different characters is really important to get the most out of your time in Japan. If you're there for, let's say, it's kind of a 2-week window, then it's really important to kind of see as many different cities, villages, towns as possible, just so you get a kind of a really good broad image of everything that the country has to provide. I mean, starting with Tokyo, which is where the majority of people will start and end their time in Japan, just doing that kind of round trip, you'll be greeted with, well, all those things that you see popping up on social media. I mean, it's the kind of it's the metropolis of the city. It's the capital where you've got kind of bright lights, neon, busy streets, shops, endless amounts of shops, and just fascinating things that you can discover left, right, and center. But compare that to some of the kind of the Geisha districts in Kyoto, kind of the old streets and the kind of meandering rivers and the kind of quieter kind of parts of that city, and then compare that again with being, well, kind of only yourself in the mountains with that river streams kind of going underfoot and these temples and shrines that have been slowly reclaimed by nature. I mean, there's just so much variety, I would say, to Japan, that it's important not to just kind of stay in one spot, but try and see as much as you can.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you think, kind of, why do you think that experiences kind of matter so much, kind of more in Japan? Because like you go around, you want to do experiences wherever you go, you want to experience the locations kind of wherever you're traveling. But why is it so much more important in Japan than just ticking stuff off a list?
I mean, I'd argue that I think kind of getting those, I'd say, hands-on cultural experiences that are so important compared with kind of ticking things off, just so that you've got a kind of a tangible memory of the place that you've just visited. And that's so important with Japan because there's so many opportunities for people to kind of actually get stuck in with these experiences. You know, try your hand at taiko, try your hand at sushi rolling, going on these kind of like going on a bike ride across the inland sea. Like these aren't, I mean, compared to like passive experiences where you're just sort of standing back and then watching things from a distance, there's so much opportunity to actually get stuck in Japan and actually try crafting something from someone that's been learning how to craft this one type of thing for generations, or you know, kind of coming back with new skills as well as memories when you come home. We're like, oh no, how did you learn how to do this particular origami? We're like, well, I learned in Kyoto actually. And it's you're just sort of taking that one step up from keeping up with the Joneses, as it were. But I'd say that that was really crucial in creating your own stories from Japan. And that's really where Japan can elevate your experience from, well, simply going on holiday, but actually having that cultural adventure that you can really take home with you. And then it will become a trip that, I mean, will be nothing short of life-changing, really. So it's kind of getting stuck in, getting involved, not box ticking, and actually having the opportunity through these experiences to meet the many different people of Japan, has enough value in itself to do, really.
Yeah, I found myself guilty of that in the past in my earlier travels, and I haven't really realised it until I've started travelling more in my current job role. And you get involved a lot more. You do more excursions. You go out, you go and see, you do more tours, those types of things. And it's really dawned on me that that's what I used to do. I used to go around box ticking. I used to have this list of things, and yeah, okay, we've seen that, and on we go again. But that's not traveling. That's not learning about places where you visit. That's not understanding, you know, the people and the cultures and the history of stuff. You really have to do those tours and excursions to really start to unlock and understand it for yourself and make those memories and make that link and connection to the place.
Absolutely. Just try and move away from the passive experiences that, while as nice as they might seem on the surface, are more forgettable, I would say, and just something where you're looking back through pictures of you in front of a monument that everybody's queuing up to take a picture with, and you'd be like, oh yeah, no, I was there, huh? When actually, if you've, we're kind of having these really sort of hands-on experiences means that those kind of, well, that'll just last and last and last, and you'll actually have that sort of authentic, unique experience with these places that isn't just taken from the shelf, really. It's yours.
Exactly.
It's yours.
Yeah. So we keep on talking about cultural experiences when we're talking about Japan all the time. So let's have a little bit of look of cultural immersion. Yeah, and people they kind of want an authentic culture encounters when they go away, as exactly what we've just been talking about. But what are some of those experiences that bring people closer to Japan? Kind of Japanese life and traditions. Kind of what should they be doing? What should they be looking at?
So I mean, in terms of the list of experiences that you can do in Japan, it's seemingly endless, I would say. There's just, I mean, we've been putting together people's trips to Japan for just over 25 years now. We actually celebrated our birthday again not too long ago, but and as a result, there really is something for everyone. So it really depends on the type of traveler that you might be. Actually going to Japan with you're going as, let's say, like a honeymoon. If you're going by yourself, if you're going with a family, if you're a recent retiree, it is a destination for everyone. But I'd say that the absolute musts that I've done in the past have always been, they just felt like such a unique opportunity, and kind of crafting is something that I always recommend, and kind of taking part in that, and kind of learning how to do things like calligraphy is really good fun, but also paper making is something that I've tried my hand in the past, where you're able to kind of get all of the pulp that's used to kind of make the paper, and then you sort of like gently position it in these tiny squares, and then you add flourishes of local flowers or sort of like decorations that you can kind of mix in with the pulp, and then you kind of squeeze it in the very old school traditional way through this huge press, and then you kind of cut the paper into size, and then you can take that paper home. And I used a number for letters pretty quickly after I got back, but there are still one or two kicking around that I'll treasure forever. And it's actually having that physical thing that you made through the expertise and the knowledge from these Japanese artisans that you can use as the most amazing souvenir to take home. So things like paper making are really good. But thinking about the sort of more traditional aspects, things like tea ceremonies are still a really good inclusion. And actually having to do one with, I'm not sure if anybody can see behind me, but actually doing one with a Maiko. Now, for those that might be unfamiliar with what is a Maiko, essentially it is an apprentice geisha. So usually geishas start their training when they're about 14, 15, around that sort of age, and then they learn how to become a geisha over a 6-year period. So they're basically kind of going through this training for about, until they're kind of 20, 21, something like that. So it's a really intensive experience for them and a program of learning, but a great opportunity for kind of visitors to Japan to actually meet with these Maiko, with these apprentices, find out more about them, and also learn how to do the tea ceremony while they're there. So you're actually having a really sort of unique opportunity to learn this, this ritual, essentially.
So what is a geisha?
So a geisha is an entertainer. Overall, so they learn all sorts of different, artistic, styles. So dancing is kind of probably quite high up on the list, but also telling jokes, telling stories, learning how to play the shamisen, which looks a bit like a guitar. But it's actually just got two or three strings. So I think it's just the two strings. And it's this kind of long, kind of thin musical instrument that they sort of pluck. And the interesting thing, the shamisen, is that because there's only two strings, like with a regular guitar, you would tune it and then you would play your song. Whereas with a shamisen, you're constantly tuning it to get the sound right. So you're sort of strumming this instrument and then constantly tuning it on the go. So it's a really actually complicated stringed instrument. But actually listening to them play music or dancing or telling jokes and also playing games as well. There's a very popular game that you can play with a geisha, which involves a kind of upside down cup. And then you would sort of take it in turns and sort of tapping the cup and lifting it up. And then whoever sort of puts their hand at the wrong time is basically out, and they do that in tune while singing a song, which is really good fun. But essentially they are performers and entertainers. And when they become geisha, then kind of having a geisha at your social engagement, at your social function, can be very, very, very expensive. So actually, if you're trying to impress, let's say, a new business partner and you take them out for dinner and there is a geisha there, chances are you'll probably get that deal because they know how much it costs to really impress the other party. So it really sort of shows that value to it. But when they're a Maiko, then they are slightly more, I'd say, accessible in terms of that price point.
I thought that they were more servants, like within houses and stuff like that. That's what I thought geishas were.
I think if you watch old or like period films or period Japanese films, or things like the kind of relatively new Shogun on Disney Plus, then you might sort of see kind of housekeepers and servants and attendants to the household that look a bit similar to a geisha,
Okay.
but those are just attendants essentially. So they would sort of take care of that side of things, whereas geisha would be sort of a much more elevated position that would be brought in at the evening to perform through a certain period. So they wouldn't be necessarily sort of doing the cleaning while they're not there. They're very much sort of like the highlight of the evening.
Yeah. Oh, incredible. So you're also talking about kind of kimono dressing, and is that part of the geisha experience, or is it not part? How's that?
I would say it very much is. Now with geishas, then their dress is always in the very, very formal, elevated kimono, which is the Japanese kind of outfit essentially, with the robes. If you're looking to see how to put on a kimono in the most elegant way, then geishas will have that down. That's part of their training to make sure that they are immaculate. Interestingly, they don't usually dress themselves, so they kind of like have the lower layers on, but then with the final touches and the final layers in kimonos, it's usually always a man that does that, and that was largely just due to the nature that kind of men you often have a slightly wider wingspan to kind of stretch out everything and sort of put it on. So it's usually a man that sort of does that element to it. But then kind of in addition to that, then you've also got their makeup and their hair. And the way that you can usually tell the difference between an apprentice geisha, a Maiko, and a graduated geisha is that a graduated geisha will have a very immaculate wig that they'll have on, that'll sort of be on. Whereas a Maiko, an apprentice, will have their own hair that is made up to do it. And so essentially when they graduate, they're allowed to stop doing that to their hair and they can put on the wig and then put on the white makeup and everything like that. But it's a bit of a tough process for the Maiko, largely because it is their own hair, and which means that they need to have it specially done, and then kind of try and keep it as immaculate as possible on off days. And as a result, there is a special type of pillow, which I'm playing a bit fast and loose with the word pillow here, but essentially it's this wooden block that has a sort of semicircle kind of cut into it, so they can lie back and their hair is undisturbed as they're sleeping, which doesn't sound frightfully comfortable. But when they wake up, then there's minimal that they have to do to their hair as a result. But yeah, with the kimonos, then it is very much like that's the kind of what they wear, the geishas. But everybody can wear a kimono, and you'll often see people, usually at sort of festivals, they might wear a sort of lighter kimono called a yukata, or ceremonial events. So if you're at a wedding, for example, then the bride and the groom will have their own gender appropriate kimonos that they'll be wearing, and obviously all the family will be dressed up there too. And usually you can see maybe some old retired ladies that are very immaculate in their kimonos, going from tea to tea and sort of going around shopping that you'll see in some of the cities. So that's always quite a nice spot. But they're not necessarily geishas. They are just elegant ladies wearing their kimonos out about town.
What's the attraction pull? I don't know if you'll know this one, but what is the pull for a 12-year-old to become a geisha?
I think it's going to be slightly different for every 12, 13-year-old that wants to become a geisha.
I guess.
But over the summer, I was lucky enough to actually have one of these experiences, these audiences with a Maiko, where we've sat down as a group of around 10 of us, and then we also had a translator there. And we were able to ask them questions, and the translator was able to obviously ask the Maiko directly. And the Maiko that we had then was saying that actually she decided to become a geisha based off her experiences when she was growing up reading a manga, which is a Japanese comic, essentially, that's incredibly popular all through the country. And mangas do range in content. So the ones that we often see in the West are about sort of, big robots or monsters or aliens or something kind of along those lines, or One Piece, which is one of the most popular ones about pirates. But actually, manga has such a huge range of different genres that there is something that appeals to everyone. So there's more sort of slice of life ones. There's about like architects that are in their kind of 40s and 50s that are trying to still, find that one to get married. And sort of, there's also ones about the makanai, which is the kind of the way of the geisha almost. So there was a really popular story about the makanai that this young girl read and then became obsessed and infatuated with. And just reading off that, she decided to make the decision to become a geisha, which is a huge honor as well. It's not like you can just say, right, today I'm going to become a geisha and then just get going. It is a bit of a process, and not everyone is selected. It is a very sort of, quite high level position. So I'm sure her family were incredibly proud when she was not only made the decision, but also accepted into the apprenticeship.
Yeah, I have tons more questions. I'm going to have to get out there and go see a geisha so I can sit down and talk about them.
It's such a great thing. And actually just sort of seeing having that experience and being able to talk to them one-on-one and then actually finding out more about them is incredible and something I'll never forget.
Yeah, okay. Well, staying with culture, obviously the Japanese temples and shrines, they're kind of unique to almost anywhere else in the world, aren't they, really? Kind of what should first-time visitors know to make these visits really meaningful? And as we said earlier, more than just a photo outside of the building, kind of what else should they know about them, really, when they're kind of planning their journey?
I think, I mean, it would be an incredible shame not to visit temples and shrines, and also quite tricky to not visit temples and shrines when you're in Japan. Because, I mean, if you think about Kyoto, which is the old capital of the country, then there are thousands of temples and shrines to choose from. But even in the larger cities like Tokyo and Osaka, then you will still find that blend of those temples and shrines kind of interspersed amongst the quite commercial or residential areas. So it is really tricky not to see one. I think I'd stress that it might be even impossible not to see a temple or shrine. But what I think is really important is to just have a bit of an understanding of what you might be visiting, whether it's kind of a Shinto temple or shrine or a Buddhist one, and actually sort of going along and then sort of seeing these and finding out the difference between the two, which are often sandwiched together. I mean, in Japan they have the main religions are Buddhism and Shintoism. Shintoism being native within Japan, but obviously Buddhism stretching much further. But you'll see those temples and shrines usually side by side in all sorts of these areas, and I think, and you'll see the different sort of the characters and the natures of them when you're going past. But I think for a really good experience, it's to have a bit of a game plan when it comes to visiting them, because if you're sort of saving your experience to see kind of to make the most of your temples and shrines in Japan, then you might be thinking, right, well, Kyoto is the place to do that element of the culture. But Kyoto, it has unfortunately suffered from quite a lot of over tourism over the last 10, 15, 20 years. So actually having a bit of strategy to make the most of your time there is really crucial. I think with Kyoto, then there's going to be some top attractions that you might see. So if you just typed in like absolute must sees in Kyoto, then you're going to be hit by kind of Nijo Castle, which is it's an incredible building, and also very famous for its nightingale floors, which are very tiny bells that they've put underneath the floorboards of the palace to stop intruders and ninjas and things like that, because there's a little sort of tinkling noise as you're walking along. So that is a really cool stop. Another one is the Golden Pavilion and the Silver Temple as well. Both very famous. Kiyomizu-dera is another really popular one, but all of these, usually around 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock onwards, are going to be incredibly busy. So you might be joining a bit of a queue, especially if you're going during a peak time like the spring or the autumn for the blossoms or the autumn leaves. It does get incredibly busy. So I would potentially explore some lesser known temples and shrines, and also having an insider, so one of our members of the team that's actually based in Japan, actually using the time with them to find out more about those lesser known places. There's one that is becoming more popular now, but I was there in the summer and I was able to see it, and to be honest, there weren't that many people there. It's Sanjuu Sangendo, which is very famous for two reasons. There's one which has I think 1,000 statues of the sun goddess within it. So as you're walking in, you can't take any pictures while you're in there. You can take pictures of the outside, but not inside. It's 1,000 statues of the sun goddess just lined up in about 5 or 6 rows going all the way down, and it's an incredible feeling to be there. And again, hardly anybody goes. And it's also famous for archery. So there's a Japanese form of archery, which is actually something I used to practice for a couple of years when I was living in Japan, which is Kyudo, which is where you've got this huge bow and then you have to kind of stretch it with your whole body, and then it's feels more of an art form, as kind of silly as that sounds, rather than a sport, but it's a bit of a blend of both. But they used to practice Kyudo on the, for lack of a better word, the porch, the kind of the surrounding wooden platform that surrounds the temple, down that. So actually they used to do it right next to the temple, and there's a saved bit of wood which they've now sort of cut off and then kept within the temple complex itself to keep it preserved, of arrow shaft or broken arrow shafts that have been stuck into the wood from countless archers that have just slightly missed their mark. So actually seeing something like that is something that often goes, and this is just one example, often goes missed because people too busy queuing up for the Golden Temple, which is something, but also there's more. Another thing that one of our insiders, so I was there not too long ago, maybe a couple of weeks ago, and one of our insiders was talking about these lesser known temples and shrines, and he actually said this as we were visiting Fushimi Inari, which people might be aware of, which is the 10,000 red gates that you'll find in southeast Kyoto, which is an amazing site with these red kind of torii gates going all the way up the hill. Now, because it is really well known, loads of people go. So that one, even during the summer, was incredibly busy. And actually, going with one of our insiders, you kind of lose a bit of the value, because when you arrive in Fushimi Inari, there's really only one direction to go. It's basically up, and that's it. And the sites kind of speak for themselves. Actually, going with our insider, just be like, well, to be honest, I could take you to some really interesting places. I mean, there's temples with samurai blood. Sorry, we've just gone past Halloween, so hopefully this is appropriate. But there was samurai blood from these retainers that decided to kill themselves to kind of like preserve their honor, and they spilled their blood all over this wooden floor. But this wooden floor was then preserved, protected, and then moved and then put into other structures. So you can see ceilings with this kind of samurai history there that most people, again, don't know about. And actually going with one of our insiders to these places that you had no idea existed is so much more valuable than going to Fushimi Inari with one of these insiders and potentially just joining that queue. So avoid those queues.
Yeah, okay. So moving along on to kind of festivals, because there's lots of different festivals out in Japan. Do you have a favourite that travellers should really get involved with?
I really do, yeah. So, I mean, festivals take all sorts of different shapes and sizes, depending on the city or the prefecture or even the time of year. I mean, most of the festivals in Japan take place during the summer months. So that's where you're going to find the large majority of them. And usually a lot of them will have some core classics. So you'll find street stalls selling kind of like foods like, I think we might have touched on this last week in the last episode about food, but things like the takoyaki and the kind of like noodles and chicken and that sort of thing. But people generally tend to dress up for these festivals. At least Japanese people do. That's where they wear the yukata, their light kimono, and they'll sort of go out and then enjoy the celebrations. And there's usually fireworks also happening during these summer festivals, which are really cool. But going more into the themes, and this is where my favorite one comes in, is the dance festivals that they have in Japan. And there are two that instantly come to mind. There's the Awa Odori, which is found in the east of Shikoku, which is one of the four main islands, but one of the smaller ones, kind of close to Kyoto and Osaka. And there's also Yosakoi, which is my favorite. Now, they're both quite similar. They're both dance competitions, and they both have teams from each prefecture all across Japan that then descend onto the cities and then dance to this particular song that gets played along the way, but then they'll sort of style it themselves. They'll sort of they won't change the melody, but they'll change like elements to the song to kind of make it a bit more of their own. And they will sort of change their costumes and also their dance routine as well. So they usually be around sort of 20, 30 plus performers in each dancing troupe. And they'll all perform in unison, usually in sort of 3 columns. And they won't do this inside. So that you won't find this in halls or conference centers or anything like that. You'll actually find it in the streets of the city. So during these times at both of these festivals, they close down a lot of the main streets. And then you don't necessarily need tickets to go there, although kind of booking early in advance, just make sure you've got accommodation is always a good bet. But you just walk the streets and then you'll hear this music sort of blaring like all across the city. And then you look left, right, center, and there's just different dance troupes going off in lots of different directions. And it's magical. It lasts about 3 or 4 days. And it's very high level energy, where it's just so much fun. And you can be as little or as involved as you'd like to be. But my firm recommendation is to be there for the long haul and just really make the most of this incredible dance festival. And that's just one of many. But if you are particularly keen on seeing a festival in Japan, go during the summer. That's where they are.
Okay, awesome. Again, that's why you have to talk to people who know, because you've got all these different things hidden all over the place, and coordinate it. Kind of coordinating it all is really key, isn't it? With the accommodations you've said, with getting in and out those places, with knowing where it'll be quieter, where you can get the best experience out of it. It's really key.
That's the end of part 1, episode 4. Make sure you like, follow and subscribe so you don't miss part 2. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back next week.